Welcome to Digital Ship webinar once again. So today we are stepping into an exciting subject, reducing maritime operations email load with workflow management tools. We have two guest speakers today. Let me introduce them to you. Ali Riaz, CEO of OrbitMI, and Bill Dobie, founder and CEO of SEDNA Systems. This is the first webinar from the 3-webinar series, Maritime Digital Transformation with Workflow, sponsored by OrbitMI and SEDNA. Now I will pass the word to Carl Jeffrey, founding editor of Digital Ship, who will give you some of the context why it's relevant to talk about workflows today.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about is making email more manageable in shipping. So I know that some of you have shared inboxes in your company that get thousands of messages a day, and email is central to how nearly all of us work today, and it keeps us all permanently exhausted. And we probably don't even consider that we don't have to do it this way, because what we really need to do is be kept up to date with things that are important to us. And as well as giving us lots of work to do, email also drives silos in our company because there's a limit to how many messages we can read. So we're only reading messages directly relevant to what we're doing. Now, there's been a lot of effort over the years to try and get rid of email. So one idea has been to replace it with dashboards and forms. So we're all working in a structured way with no free text. And that's great if your business is very structured like Amazon is. But since you work in shipping, it probably isn't structured. There's different things happening every day. So maybe another way to do it is to organize conversations and documentation and data in a way that everyone in the company can see what they need and be alerted about what they need at the right time, and no important messages get missed. So we've got two presentations today. I'm going to try and show how this can be done. So we've got two companies that work together. First, we're going to hear from Ali Riaz, who's the CEO of OrbitMI based in Brooklyn. They're a maritime software company spun out of SEDNA Bulk. They make a range of solutions around operations, sustainability, vessel tracking, chartering and vessel performance, and maritime intelligence, which we're defining here as supporting people to make better decisions. And Ali was saying when we discussed this webinar, he thinks that the multitude of different systems we have in our companies is often a prime cause of job dissatisfaction, because we're always going from one system to another. It makes people feel very uneasy. So maybe we're going to get more into that. So Orbit's incorporating email workflow tools into their solutions. So after that, we're going to hear about the email tool itself from Bill Dobie, founder of SEDNA Systems. So it's a company that's got tools to bring a company's conversations, data, and documentation together in one accessible place. SEDNA Systems has got offices in Singapore, London, and Vancouver. And customers include Glencore Agriculture, Australian shipping agency Monson, Danish shipping company Norden, and American food company Bung. So I'd like to invite Ali to give his opening talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see. Here we go.
Yep.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes. Great. Wonderful. So first of all, I just want to thank for this opportunity to speak with together with Bill on this really important topic of workflows. And Carl, you mentioned something earlier. You talked about the idea of getting rid of emails. And I think it's fair to say that that will be a very challenging job. And instead of trying to get rid of data or reduce data, the idea is to get more meaning out of data, contextualizing data, and making sure that instead of data becoming a liability, it really is the asset it's supposed to be. So allow me to share a little bit first about Orbit. So a little bit of marketing here, but I'll go through it.
Do you want to go to full screen mode, Ali?
Yes, of course. Do that. And we are a software company, software as a service company. So we are all in the cloud, no hardware requirements. And we call ourselves the Technology Innovation Hub for Maritime because while we represent very specific solutions like OMI and Comply, Sentry, Charter, and Orbit, the full package, and also standalone solutions, applications like AR routing and Orbit Reporter. We actually are designed to integrate in a client's data infrastructure. And that's why we're so excited about working with SEDNA, for example, who is very focused on the workflow and extracting meaning through the workflow in the world of emails. And that is really the type of companies that we're looking to partner with, because our passion and our focus is the end customers making friends with the data instead of panic around data. So we are an open. That means we connect with any system a customer has. We're extendable, meaning we can add more data sets, more applications. We're intelligent, meaning that we are powered by artificial intelligence, machine learning. And we're essentially hard focused on helping our clients managing their fleet from an efficiency, profitability, and sustainability perspective. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in our world, profitability and sustainability are highly linked, because, and the more efficient you are, the more profitable you are, and the less emissions you're creating because you're consuming less fuel. Just a few comments about some of the solutions. OMI is our market analysis, competitive intelligence solution, and Comply is our automation of regulatory reporting and carbon reporting and optimization of your carbon objectives. And you can read about the other stuff, but in the interest of time, I want to talk about why we exist. Why does Orbit exist? So, Carl mentioned that earlier. Data is a headache, and it's a headache because it's in the silos. And what happens very often is that you get an opportunity or a challenge, and there you go, running off to all these different silos, plunging into them, dealing with the security, login, cutting and pasting from them, putting this into a spreadsheet, most likely. And then by the time you get to the answer, the train has left the station, just to use a different vertical. And we all feel miserable. We did the hard work. We just showed up with the right answer too late. It's extremely important to understand the challenges silos built. Now, it's very natural that silos exist in other verticals like financial services, life sciences. You also had that experience where people were very busy building the CRM, or very busy building the ERP, or very busy building the supply chain solutions, and so on and so on. And what happened was that the silos got bigger and bigger with thicker and thicker walls. And then the challenge was that all this valuable information is in this disparate silos. But when you need an answer to a question, you very often have to go into these different silos. So we believe in the world of build the workflow. We'll talk more about the workflows. And in fact, I'm going to share a very specific example of a working workflow versus a broken silo structure. Now, before I move on, I just want to say that it's quite interesting, and Bill and I talk about this quite often, is just a couple of years ago, even a year ago, there was interest for building workflows, but effort was building silos. And because of numerous things like remote workers and regulatory requirements and all these things that happen, is that there is an enormous amount of focus on actually valuable workflows instead of just building those walls higher and higher on the silos. So what do we mean by all this? Let me share this diagram with you. Our focus is, Orbit's focus is, it starts with our clients' workflows. It's not about our bits and bytes. It's not about our data structure. It's not about all that. It starts with, how do you run your operations? How do you run your chartering, bunkering, risk and compliance, et cetera, et cetera. And once we understand how they run it and understand what is the missing gap, or what's the potential of adding more capabilities, we serve them through our Orbit solutions. And this is how we activate all the aggregation of the data and the amplification of the data. This is how we actually make all that data and make all that enriched data meaningful, because you can have data in a big bucket, but if that data is not inferred into how you work and it's not visualized where you need it, when you need it, it's actually just a waste of data. So that's our focus. That's where we start. We work our way back to amplification. This is where we use our machine learning capabilities. We use our correlation capabilities, data enrichment capabilities, cleansing, cleaning, all that stuff that allows us to actually feed these workflows with the right information with high quality. And we do that because we're designed to integrate, aggregate, and we integrate VMSs, email workflows like SEDNA, which is our partner, and also other type of information like sanctions and vetting and so on. And we get data feeds from a lot of different places, and we also ingest voyage reports, also called noon reports, which also can include everything that noon report includes, but also sensor data. So while we aggregate, amplify, and activate, we actually start with our clients' workflows, and our passion is to, with that focus, we will be able to break down silos. So I promised I was going to show you an example. And so here's an example of a simple competitive intelligence. And the question is, which company can compete for the next cargo, right? So what happens normally, you can see this is a messy infrastructure, and you have to log into multiple systems. As I mentioned, you have to pull data, and after putting in the spreadsheet, you do all kinds of analysis, and maybe you have to wait for third-party market data to validate. And unfortunately, everything is slowed down, and by the time you have got to your conclusions, somebody else got the fixture, right? It's something that happens every day, and it's time now to connect the dots. And this is how you connect the dots. So when we have unified the data from multiple systems, and that includes vessel positions and historic voyage patterns and market trends and so on, we can then allow for monitoring fleet distribution, determine which vessel can make lay-can window, perform unlimited what-if analysis, toggle from the most recent to a historical range, and also see market trends. And that allows you to do what you arrived too late to the party with, to actually complete in seconds, because it's already prepared, it's already aggregated, it's already amplified, it's already in your workflows. And this is a huge differentiation, because you can understand who you're really competing with versus who you thought at a high level. So this is about workflows, and the topic today is very focused on the email side of things. But workflows are important everywhere. And here are some benefits and values to summarize my key points. But everything we do in computer science is based on speed. So when we can act faster, we are more competitive, and we're also at peace. We are more confident that we are operating with the right information. And if we want to attract talent and we want to retain talent, we have to give our people tools that give them and data that gives them confidence, instead of chasing multiple systems and then failing again and again. So that's our goal. Our goal is to be part of this very exciting new era in the maritime industry, where we're moving from the silo deepening to actually valuable workflows across the silos. And that's why we love working with SEDNA and Bill and his team. I'll stop sharing at this point and hand over to Bill.
Thanks, Ali. I really appreciate Carl. Sorry, I don't want to jump in right away unless I should.
No, go ahead.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'll share my screen here and just give me one sec here. There, can you all see my screen there?
Yep.
I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the group today. Shipping is where my roots are. I started out about 25 years ago as a ship agent, then a broker, and then worked as a charterer before starting a software company in the oil inspection space. SEDNA is a byproduct of that, where I spent many, many years working on trying to help customers be more efficient with different workflow systems, and realized that a lot of those were occurring over email. And this was actually not necessarily a weakness, but a position of strength for the industry, because that's where high volume discussions, information flowed through. And SEDNA came about because we thought, well, what if we could make that space where people are primarily working today smarter and more connected? And we're really excited about the connection with Ali and Orbit, because we're really looking for partners who understand what synthesizing data into more intelligence does, and also are very open about integrations and solving real problems for users in our space. I'll do a really quick run through of kind of the principles behind the system. I think, as Carl described kind of our official marketing, I'll explain it in a slightly more nuanced and probably more shipping specific way. There is a stream of content associated with your doing fixtures and operating your fixtures that primarily flow through email. And even when the data comes from other systems, they are communicated to your counterparties over email. What SEDNA aims to do is to bring that entire stream into one kind of deduplicated start to finish timeline and direct it to the people in your organization who need to act on it at the right point in time, and also bring other people towards that information when they need to see it. We call it intelligent communication. Nobody actually wants more email, but getting away from email when it's an open protocol, widely used, accessible to all the parties, is not actually the problem. It's just making the volume more manageable. And I think very often I see about 60, 70 people on the call here. I probably don't need to do a lesson in one of the challenges of email. I mean, email is a 40 to 45-year-old protocol developed in the late 60s, intended for academic memo sending. And we have turned it into kind of a global transaction system. And it has a number of inherent faults within it, but key within them is that it's very brittle, insecure at source, and very difficult to be sure that you're only ever dealing with one copy of the email itself. What SEDNA does is it attempts to take those weaknesses of email, the sheer volume, the openness of it, and create a faster, smarter, more connected stream. What we do primarily is through three key pillars in the system. The first is context in a shared inbox. So it isn't so much about shared email or personal email, it's that there is a transaction. In this case, you can see this sort of green element here. And then there's a group of people who are working on it, the pink elements here, and maybe the relevant part of the transaction. And that takes information from Orbit, from Vessin, from Softmar, from Q88, any number of systems. And we use that information to direct the emails to the right party. On top of that, we have a very high scale platform, 50, 100 million messages. You can search them in under a second. And then we enable you to write and respond to the email very quickly. And at the same time, bring information from systems like Orbit specifically. The most important part of SEDNA's intelligence is the application of a job or a transaction, in our case, a voyage, a time charter, a period charter, coming from an expert system like Orbit, understanding the related asset that it's attached to, and then knowing from that expert system which of the people in the organization need to see or act on this email. And that is really this programmed nature, the idea that one of the ways to transform your workflows is to take your biggest workflow right now, which is email, simplify it and program it in a smart way. And that suddenly creates more time for your users to do their jobs and go after business, as Ali was talking about. In the Orbit sense, SEDNA is an API-based platform that has a number of connections that allow both data streams from systems like Orbit to come in and organize the emails. But simultaneously, we have an application framework, what in software terms is kind of a low-code toolkit, we call it. And a vendor, a partner like Orbit, can actually build connect their existing application through our low-code toolkit directly to the message stream itself. So this could appear next to a message that's already organized against the correct voyage, and then it could also interact back into Orbit directly, so that the user, the charter or the operator, doesn't have to leave SEDNA in order to find some information or in order to insert some information as part of an email that he's crafting to push against that. We have a number of integrations across the shipping space and then with internal systems for our customers. I'm going to mention that we think this is probably only the beginning of the work with Orbit, that there's a whole range of information, you know, that next to an email that is assessing a number of vessels or presenting a number of vessels, we'll be able to reach back and actually pull in comparative information or performance information. So beyond the sort of initial vision, which is really instant access to the vessel you're looking at, adding it to a position list, and then creating an email with information from Orbit, we see a much richer set of integrations for our customers that we can attach next and easily build in our API. I think my favorite part of these webinars is actually talking a bit about some of the challenges. And I think I'll stop my presentation there, Carl, and hand it back to you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'd like to invite everybody to enter any questions you have in the Q&A box. I mean, the first question that comes to my mind, so in terms of the structure and how the industry actually works, because the shipping industry is probably the least structured industry in the world in terms of everybody is problem solvers. But if everyone's doing something different every day, like a ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal or something unusual, then you can't structure it. But I guess that's kind of an extreme view of what people do in shipping. I guess it's something, there's maybe less structure than working in groceries, but people are still doing repetitive things. But I suppose this is the challenge you're dealing with. Is that how it looks like to?
Yeah, Ali, do you want to start with that, or?
I can provide some thoughts, but and then we'll love your thoughts as well. So we have to look at this not as Maritime being super different from everybody else. I think respectfully, Maritime professionals are managing a very complex world, a more and more volatile world. And we have to understand where we are in terms of the evolution. And initially, you have to remember the focus has been on hardware, right? The focus has been on the vessels and technology on the vessels. Then it gets to the other hardware that you can put on the vessel to make things better. And then it gets to the world of software. And in that, there are several phases. Phase number 1 is build the silos. Phase 2 is to break the silos. And phase 3 is to actually operate with data as your friend. So where are we? We are actually right there where a lot of companies, and SEDNA has some of the best clients in the world, that are already thinking digital transformation, that are already thinking to make data be data-driven. And SEDNA provides them the capability, and with Orbit to get together as well in the future, we will see more and more customers saying it's easy enough now, it's easy enough for us to actually adopt more technology, right? If you tell somebody they have to spend 2 years to patch something together and then they will see ROI in 3 years from now, 4 years from now, Maritime industry, or for that sake, any other industry, doesn't have that level of patience for waiting for the payback. So with new technologies in the cloud, with pre-integrations that we're doing with SEDNA, for example, a client can very quickly get to ROI, right? With a lot less development risk. So we're very empathetic to all the investments that have been made so far, but we are now seeing, we are standing there with our message and our capabilities, but we're seeing the market now saying, okay, this is not working. We're not moving fast enough. We're not making decisions fast enough. And by the way, we have to do all this regulatory reporting. So that's really where we are. And that's really exciting for companies that are built to integrate, built to collaborate.
I think I 100% agree, Ali. I think part of it is a mindset about trying to, shipping is a co-opetition type business, right? You both cooperate and compete, and sharing is difficult. And because the opportunities to make money, they are in flux all of the time at the varies of the market. I'll sort of get on my soapbox a bit on complexity, and then talk a little bit about how we see it. First, I as a technologist who's been at this, working in the industry for about 20 years, I chafe generally at the idea that our industry is not very innovative. There's some profound innovations in the construction of ships, environmental compliance, safety, tax optimization, all of these things that the industry has been applying to it. They are only really now able to turn some attention, I think, to the data flow as compliance and other factors bleed into that. My own personal view of why the industry appears as complex as it is, I think if you were to ask a trader, a charter, an operator, they probably think the core job of solving problems is very natural to them, but they feel overwhelmed by the data around them. And I think what it is that many of us are self-taught as we come up through the industry. And as we do that, we develop some kind of patterns. We put stuff in folders, we store stuff a certain way, we write it down a certain way, and we become very attached to these habits. And we think these habits are the reason that we're a good charter or we're a good operator. And actually, that's not true. This isn't, the reason you're good at fixing a ship or solving a problem, getting a ship out faster, is because you have experience and you're just plain good at that. It's not because you move email around or you go look something up in a bunch of different systems. So but I think that it's very hard, very frightening, and there's a lot of failed projects in our industry technologically to get people to move away to a new perspective. So just a tiny bit of framing, and then I'll get on I mentioned a sort of technological aspect to it. Now, interestingly enough, as computing power, as the availability of data, as the affordability of high processing that you can get across, Amazon and Azure and other things have come to bear, what you're going to discover in the shipping industry is that our ability as an industry to know all of the knowable things is actually quite high. This is unlike other aspects of automating commerce and making commerce more efficient, where there's a lot of ephemeral, financial instruments or these types of things. Our industry is a physical fact. The ship is somewhere, the cargo is somewhere, the owner is somewhere, the person is somewhere, the weather is this. So we're really on the cusp, finally, powered by the availability of a lot more computing energy, computing power, a lot more information in the form of email from systems like SEDNA, AIS, indices, all of these types of things. And now's a kind of perfect storm to create a smarter future. But what it requires is really vendors like Orbit, who are willing to connect these systems together. And what we try to do at SEDNA, and look, we're not always perfect on it because dealing with email is very, very difficult, very complex, very hard to compete with Microsoft, so to speak. But what we try to do is hold the user front and center. On average, can we save 10, 15, 30 minutes, an hour? On average, could we help them imagine a future where they don't spend an hour of their day putting stuff in folders? If you can win on that basis, then they breathe a little bit easier and they can begin thinking about new things. Then comes along a partnership with someone like Orbit, and it isn't so much that they don't want to look up where the vessel is somewhere, but they're unsure, that they can get it fast enough. Is it an accurate representation? Suddenly, in a combined system, you can say, yeah, here's the message asking about where the vessel is. Here is where the vessel is. Now, one click later, I can tell you where the vessel is. And by the way, I have to tell you where the vessel is because that's in the contract. I can't just use AIS. And you're suddenly making the user faster and faster. So I think as vendors, we have an obligation to the market to kind of make life easier today and then kind of paint a picture of how the user is going to get more efficient in the future. But I don't actually think the industry in of itself is any more complex than other complicated marketplaces that are functioning. It simply is dealing in the real world. And now in 2021, that really lends itself to the kind of tools available to solve these problems.
Wow, that's very good. Yeah, it sounds like you're sort of modeling how the industry works, but I've got more ideas on this, but we'll go to the questions coming in here. So there's one from David Levy from Orbit and one from Max Retch, who LinkedIn says is a nautical superintendent trainee with Harmonia Reader-I in Hamburg. Maybe we'll go to Max's question. I don't know what a KPI filter is. I don't know if you do, Bill. Do you? I don't know what a KPI is, but
I think, I mean, I would probably curate KPI filters. Max is asking, can SEDNA include KPI filters in their solution? So if I take that question from an email perspective, I'll try to answer that. And then if it's more KPIs about vessel performance, I'll turn to Ali on that one. So the idea of SEDNA is that the platform itself is programmable. So when you have to kind of imagine what kind of workflows and processes you would build if you could directly have a smarter system or a more intelligent system have access to the email stream in real time. So there's a few different things you could do. You can output statistics about your email to Tableau, to an internal system. Some of our customers export those outputs to actually machine learning algorithms, you know, all the things, how quickly are things responded, how many times you're seeing something, that type of stuff. On a pure KPI basis, I can give you an example of a UK financial institution who's a customer of ours. And they have response time SLAs associated with things that fall outside their automated processes. And they come in via email. And SEDNA has watchers, which then broadcast the messages and alerting out to another system that tells them, hey, these emails haven't been dealt with fast enough. So if you have a way, if you are using a third-party KPI system, we can push out to that. We have our own tooling. Ultimately, we kind of, if you were our customer, I would turn to you and say, what business problem are you solving with that KPI? And then how can we create a workflow around that?
Oh, that's great. Thanks to David for getting the questions started. I hope you won't mind if we move on to the ones that might be from customers. But so Ravi Ryo, I don't know, I looked him up on LinkedIn, but there's a few Ravi Ryos in the maritime industry. He's asking about the information security of backup data to combat troubleshooting of technical support. I suppose you're not actually talking about technical support to vessels. I don't know. Well, I suppose Ali, you were talking a lot of stuff for technical support for vessels themselves. Do you want to share some thoughts on the information security?
Absolutely. It's an extremely important question. We have to remember that maritime industry is very, very sensitive about information security and sharing of the right data, and never sharing other data that's confidential. And that makes it extremely important to understand what can be shared, what cannot be shared, so that you can actually provide things like technical support to vessels. And so, funny enough, with Orbit, the first white paper we wrote was about data security. And so we take that as an integral part, like number one filter we have to go through in terms of ensuring that there's a trust and transparency around data security. And so I urge Ravi to visit our website, or I can send it to you personally, our first white paper, which was about data security. I just want to answer the question earlier from regarding KPIs. So in order to get a notification, so Orbit provides notifications on a vessel that's, you know, doing something different than you planned. You need to actually establish performance criteria. And once you establish the performance criteria or KPIs, then everything that's happening in real time is pinged against those. And if it's out of line and if it's above a certain level, very precisely based upon your role and what you're looking for, you will get an alert to your mobile app. So KPIs is not an afterthought. It really has to be how engagement and with the data that's coming in is influenced. So I just wanted to just share that as well.
Oh, very good. So there's a few more questions for you here, Bill. So Malcolm Soars from One Ocean, he's asking how SEDNA compares with Teams or Slack. Anton Zakharov from iGauge in Paris is saying, what makes you stand out? I guess it's the same. Sean Cooper is saying, does it work on a PC and Macintosh and together with Outlook and Exchange? Do you want to, maybe they're all quite similar questions. Do you want to?
Cool. Since I think we're okay for time, I'm gonna extend on what Ali said about security as well too. There are obviously a number of technical considerations associated with security and data availability, but the real heart of security, I think shipping actually really understands this. the heart of security is about habit and process and provenance and being sure that what you have is a complete set of the information, right? So another word for this might be transparency or visibility. So in addition to all the secure things that companies like Ali and SEDNA can do to protect your email against hacking and those types of things, more than anything, ensuring that there's only one copy of the data that people are looking at and interacting with, and then logging people's interactions with that data or that email or that message. That's actually how you kind of improve security and redundancy, because I can see that Ali looked at this message, or I can go, if I'm in Orbit and I looked at something, and then I can go back and say, well, this is the point in time I looked at it. So this is kind of also one of the things we're trying to bring to the industry, is a more modern view of this. It's not, you know, we're all using AWS and Azure and a range of technologies to protect this, and that's an ongoing battle to keep your data safe. But it's much more about visibility. You know, does leadership know what the frontline is doing, and does the frontline know that they can elevate things to leadership when they need help? And what's the information cycle and flow to do that quickly enough to respond to a problem? So just more on that point. On the Slack Teams question is one of my favorite. I mean, does anybody really want more chat in their world? It's probably the easy joke that I would put on that, but it's much more nuanced than that. I actually think one of the reasons SEDNA exists is because of Slack. Slack represented industry-wide acceptance that, wow, there's a way for me to do something better about email and get off of email because I hate my email so much. Slack comes along, profound success. So in no way taking that away from them. But what they did is they actually created even more unstructured discussion, more notifications, more places for people to go. And Teams is a natural competition to that. I think Teams has some slightly more interesting competitive dynamics around workflows, which are more future thinking. But our hypothesis is that unstructured chat or discussion, including email, disconnected from a business transaction or asset, is only more work for the frontline user. So in SEDNA, we have chat. You can chat around an email, you can discuss it, you could chat back to Orbit and send data there, for example, but it's really related to the ask that's being made in the email, and it's related to the voyage or the fixture or the shipbuilding that you're managing in that process. And we think it's very important. Asana, we would integrate with that. We integrate with Monday, with Airtable, with task management systems. So you kind of imagine like this raging river of your email, and then you're building these very orderly irrigation channels to all these different systems you use for it. And happy to get into a longer discussion about the merits of Teams and Slack generally on it. By the way, shipping is a great business to program communications flows because the transactions tend to be fairly long life cycle, and they contain data, which makes it quite easy to organize the messages correctly. I mean, I'm sure our users that get 10, 15,000 emails a day, when we tell them that they're 90% accurate in tagging, they might think, oh, that's not good enough, but it's still thousands of emails where we're able to correctly infer what transaction it's related to, organize it, and then direct it to the correct party. And I think that that's really something that goes beyond what a Slack channel can do or Teams channel can do. Asana, I like a lot. And I think Asana represents, we see a lot, I guess, again, on another soapbox, we see the future in systems like Orbit and other platforms, but there's an interregnum problem of how you manage this uncontrollable information flow. And SEDNA is trying to be a place where you can structure that more easily and then take it to a smarter system. We also believe there's a giant business just in being that data pipe, that platform to help you be more efficient. On the other question, on the platforms that make it available today, I mean, I think that might, and Ali, that might be one for you. On my point of view, obviously there are people who work on email and shared email. It's a big market with several billion users. What we think is really unique about us is the scale of our system, its high performance nature, its singular message nature, and its programmability. And then obviously the open nature under which other systems can program that flow. And there are all kinds of interesting behaviors you can get when two SEDNA customers are talking to each other as well, security and more enriched data exchange. And we think that that creation of a private network that we're actively building across thousands of users already is pretty compelling.
So you're maritime specific, of course.
Yes, absolutely. A huge part of our business is maritime or wider supply chain, those types of things. We think the problem exists across all markets that do transactional work. And if I can do a plug for all of shipping, if I may say so, I think that our industry is ahead of the curve today because we were used to working the way the whole world had to work in COVID. So the way that the whole world had to work in COVID, which is atomized, distributed offices, asynchronous, delegated responsibility, suddenly the whole world has had to catch up to that. And so I think all of you have some lessons there. And then absolutely can work on both platforms, but I'll hand it over to Ali and I'll come back to the platform question that got asked.
Yeah, David's question is very interesting about whether this system makes it easier for people coming into the industry to understand what's going on, rather than deal with 15,000 emails a day, have it all structured. Must want to share some thoughts on that. Do you want to? Yeah, on mute at the moment, Ali.
Oh, yes. Of course, email is the first thing we wake up and the first panic is emails. And anything that can make that more intelligent, especially in this industry where there's massive amount of emails that include lots of opportunities and challenges, and you want to distill them. One of our clients actually show them Orbit, show in candidates for employment, they show them Orbit to lure them to join the company. To show them that, hey, you don't have to log into 7-8 systems before lunch to get to your answer. Which leads me to the question that was, what's so special about us, right? And I think what we are most proud of is that, A, we were built to integrate, right? And we built because we know what the client needs are today, but we don't know what their needs will be tomorrow. And you constantly have to add more and more data sets. And the second thing is with integration is that the client already has invested in different capabilities. Whether that's SEDNA or a VMS or a number of things that they have, in order to actually connect with all those and create workflows with them, allows them to actually get more value from their existing systems that have nothing to do with us. So our focus has been on client success versus, just deepening our own silo. And the third thing that I'm really excited about is that we are very machine learning rich. So we do not believe in presenting raw data. Just like SEDNA, creating a lookup engine for 10,000 emails a day doesn't help you. But to synthesize it, to tag it, and to make sure that it goes into the right folders, and then you know what you're going to do with it, and you can share it. It's learning to surf the tsunami versus being crushed by it. And the third thing is that we really believe that time to ROI is super important. Therefore, having to install hardware and doing all that stuff can be very time consuming. So our goal becomes to do everything in the cloud and through software. And that allows our clients and partners to engage with us, and clients to get to ROI much faster. And we have preset workflows, as I mentioned before, on OMI and Sentry and chartering and all these different areas. But that's just the beginning for us. We come to the market with our own capabilities. We have 18 capabilities, 5 solutions, 2 standalone applications. But we're never gonna solve all the problems and all the opportunities for our customer. That's not how it works. We're gonna be very good at what we do, and we're gonna focus on maritime, because the moment you become, Teams can do a lot of stuff for a lot of different companies. Of course, we use Teams as well. But the verticalization is where you create the value, right? So the hard focus SEDNA has had on maritime means that it's contextualized for that industry. And Orbit is also focused on maritime alone.
Carl, on David's question as well, one of the things that we kind of all rag on email and that type of thing, but just imagine the learnings that exist within a customer's millions of messages, right? And a huge part of our journey with customers is importing and decommissioning their old storage, right? So you bring in millions of old messages and then you make them kind of instantly available. Ultimately, we hope to feed them to machine learning models, obviously with the client's permission, if they want that, to systems like Orbit. But the reality is you onboard new people and you know, you're trying to deal with a particular problematic customer or situation or at the load dock. You know, I recall back when I was operating ships, we had a problem in a ship discharging in Bangladesh, for example, and I couldn't get a hold of anyone on Saturday. And if I could have had access to the history instantly, all the messages, not clicking through the same copy of the message 6 times, maybe access to the commercial dashboard like that Orbit can deliver in real time, I might have been able to deal with that particular traumatic situation for me back when I was in the late 90s a lot better. And I think that's, you know, it's also about bringing, you know, more and more people are starting to work at shipping companies that are coming in non-conventional ways. They don't come off from the sea, these types of things. How do you give them the context and knowledge of those who came before them? I think this is where data can get really good and really interesting learnings can be taken from that.
Oh, that's great. So Adam Stahl from Orbit is asking, I don't know if this is for, I think it's mainly for you, is it if you're going to be tagging anything else in the email apart from the last 3 cargoes and performance data and new report? Is there other examples of assets you can tag? Is that?
Yes. So, I mean, what we can do is for every message that comes in, the client can connect it to Orbit already, and obviously we can enrich against an asset. But if those customers wanted to work with Orbit and then have us, you know, instantly the last 3 cargoes appear on the right-hand side of that message, or any enriched data, comparative vessels, that type of thing, they can be published in against the message itself. I mean, we don't even really think of email, like we don't think of email as the way you would think about it as an Outlook message. It's really just as a data object, and then how do you enrich that data object? It's actually very hard to do that when it's in a proprietary kind of Microsoft Exchange format, but just treating it like a database entry and then that's cleansed and singular, and then you can kind of add more information against it. That's really kind of the future we want to go to. As a baseline, we believe that talking is not only fundamental, but good for our industry. We don't want to discourage asynchronous, random communication, the dealing with the solving of problems. We just want to stop arguing about whether or not the sky is blue. And the way to do that is to make sure that there's only one copy of the facts that are ascertainable. And so absolutely, you know, I'll say we do integrate with many partners and we're getting some good momentum with it, but the industry is brittle in this regard. Providers who've been in the market a long time, and the customers, frankly, believe that information sets that they've accumulated represent competitive differentiation. We disagree with this. You know, the competitive differentiation comes from how well you lead your people, how well you support them, the training, how well and how quickly you present information to them, how fast you help them conclude deals and attract great talent and do it safely. Of course, I'm not talking about how much you fix the ship for, but a list of vessels, a list of tags, the last 3 cargoes, you know, these types of things, they are not the gold that people think they are. And I think what I love about Orbit is they really believe in the democratization of public information and then connecting it to give a customer, a user, an answer faster. And you know, there is no bigger source of information about a business than the ones and zeros of their email already. So, you know, working with Adam and Ali and stuff, I think we're going to do some great things for our customers. And it's the attitude too. It's a really, you know, Ali's business model is not designed on owning every piece of the stack. And this is super important because our industry can't support that kind of scale, you know.
Go on, Ali.
Add one comment here, and I think it's our job also to share the power that emerging technologies offer now, right? Because if you've been, you know, in your job, building applications, managing systems, the word customization normally means a lot of spend and development and time and all that stuff. But we have to remember that if more newer architectures are designed for quicker customization, right? So software originally came out as here's a CRM, and whoever you are, just use the CRM, and this is how you are. And then over time, it became more and more verticalized, right? It was for financial services was different, and within financial services, you have different for investment banking versus retail banking and so on. It used to be very expensive, but it's not anymore, and that's why we use the word dream building, is because we want our clients to dream what they want and go back to their dreams that were broken or not achievable before. And because you think about the architecture that SEDNA has and the architecture that Orbit has, we're designed to have you ask, what if? We're designed for you to say, I have a new business line, I have a new requirements, I have a new data set. And so we welcome that, whereas older architectures very often will say, this is not possible. So we challenge our clients and partners to challenge us and help us, really bring what's beautiful to market, which is that every customer, every need, every day is unique. And if the technology is holding you back, you might as well just pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah. And what the bigger picture here, so you're presenting a vision of what future companies will look like with everything being digitalized. And I think there's two different visions. So there's like the sort of Uber kind of Amazon kind of vision where the computer tells you what to do all the time as a worker. So highly structured, go there, do this, pick this up, press that. Whereas shipping could never be that structured because it's so freer, but you need a different approach to digitalization where you get the right information for lots of different systems, but through cleverness and modeling, putting the right things in front of people at the right time, which I think is the kind of vision you're showing here, isn't it? I think so. Now it's becoming more possible because of all these tools that make this stuff easier to build.
The most successful digital transform companies hire more people. So that's another myth that, if you digitalize and you become data centric, then you don't need people. So that's not what we're talking about here. What we're saying is that the time you spend to get to an answer goes from days, hours to seconds, or if at all, right? And so, and that means that when you are, as a human, doing work, that you have more reliable data that gives you the insight to be able to compete and serve your clients in a way that it's accurate. And so it's really just using data to back up what you're going to do, and that's really important part of how people work, right? And in fact, the best companies in the world, they are data driven, and they're successful, and they transform how their people spend time. Instead of chasing data, they do more client and customer intimacy.
The augmenting of it. And Ali, you and I have talked about this before. Our industry is actually remarkably lean from a people point of view. And when you go to a very large shipping company, one of our, Norden, as you mentioned, hundreds of vessels under operation, this type of thing. If you would think actually relatively how few people they have executing those transactions versus say a financial institution or some other actually so-called more sophisticated markets. I think what it really is that the fixing process itself is high trust and well understood. Operations is something that people have vast experience in, but they're being overwhelmed by the demands and the volume and that. And I actually think we haven't experienced the, I don't know what the word is, the post-COVID reaction, supply chain reaction. So there's going to be a sort of, everyone understands how important the supply chain is. And of course, bulk and shipping is the first order part of that. And we need to think of ourselves as important a piece of the supply chain as the guy who's dropping off the Amazon package. And I think that the expectations from the industry for more transparency, more unification, more shared risk reward and the performance around that, this is going to require a much richer data ecosystem to achieve.
Okay, so just before we wrap up, I think there's a question from Sean Cooper, who I think is from an asset tracking company called Interstellar, is asking, is SEDNA and Orbit coming as an integrated package? I mean, you've explained how the combined advantages, I think you've already explained already, but I don't know if you'd like to.
Like any good shipping company, Ali and I will make a deal work. And and if a consolidated purchase is attractive, for sure. You know, Ali, sorry, I don't want to speak for you.
100%.
Yeah.
And you know, the hard work is around pre-integration and having two vendors not have to discover once you have selected them, right? We have done the discovery, we've done the design, and we've done the integration points so that you can actually have a seamless experience. That's our goal. And we're going to do more and more around that. And Sean Cooper, please call us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll make it happen.
So Christopher Desser is asking a pokey question about what happens if the shipboard hardware or email system doesn't work, but I suppose you just don't get any emails in that case. Is that for you, Bill?
I mean, our infrastructure is operated in 3 different zones globally simultaneously, and so there's a high degree of availability around that, and then a whole range of I think in many we definitively exceed the uptime and availability of in-house systems for sure, and we're comparative to the major, to Outlook and stuff. You can actually see how we do at status.sedna.com, and you can go where we're transparent about incidences and why they happened and no blame retrospectives and stuff like that. But our system is highly available, powered by the AWS infrastructure globally. And we have a number of protocols where we can relay information to your internal emergency storage systems in relative real time so that you could fall back to something like that. And I think, there's a lot of work in this space on resiliency. And again, an area that I think shipping is good at, right? Backups, things go wrong, and we welcome those discussions and work hard to make sure we're available.
Well, that's great. Perhaps we'll, oh, sorry, Ali.
I'll just add one comment to Christopher. One of the most beautiful things about machine learning is that it can actually help you fill in the gaps, right? Data is never going to be perfect, right? Somebody's lying if it's perfect. But how can you use technologies to say, maybe this data is not correct. Maybe you need to take a look, right? So it's pointing you to potential errors. Or if there's a gap, you can use machine learning in terms of like data from the past and say, most likely the data that's missing is number 18 or whatever the number. So there are things that happen that you cannot control, and nothing is ever 100%. But can you actually fill in the gaps, and can you actually predict what it could have been, and then keep on moving on with your task? That's really a really amazing power of artificial intelligence that we leverage.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Well, I think we've heard a vision of the future, how we're going to communicate in the future, how we're going to buy software in the future, how we're going to set up our software in the future, and how it's all going to be so much easier, and we're going to work differently. And I think that's fantastic. So I think maybe we're coming up to the hour now, so perhaps we'll leave it with that. Thank you very much, Ali and Bill, and I'll pass back to Vida for the closing word. Thank you.
If you got curious about the potential of workflows, we invite you to explore this subject further with us on June 17th. We'll be discussing voyage management using cloud-hosted workflow tools. Sign up and check our other production on the website webinars.digitalship.com. We'll see you next week. Now Digital Ship is logging off until Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.